I could make you cry in 30 seconds,
Okay.
or afraid. I could make you afraid in 30 seconds.
I believe that.
Jonathan Andrew Price, Pro Counsel, United States Government. I'm a Lockheed man. I'm a radical writer, and I'm severely mentally ill. I'm a dirty Dem. I'm a champagne liberal. I was a mole in the collegiate Republicans for a progressive group.
I worked in high-end restaurants. I was a sommelier. I was a wine guy. And,
Oh.
in the West Village, in like a Hollywood on the Hudson hot spot full of celebrities. That was a place called The Lion, and it was, yeah, Valentino was one of my regulars,
Yeah.
it was that kind of cool thing.
My new
Oh, sick. Louder.
first words of the book are, I am a sick man. I am a wicked man.
Fucking A, right.
Famous person. So I don't want to like show
I'm
the
wearing a like a sort of navy blue dinner jacket with a J. Crew sweater that has almost a purple patina to it, and a floppy, goofy pocket square that I could perhaps tuck in to be a little bit more dignified
Oh, I like that.
for our meeting.
I'm wearing a mini kimono, a mini silk kimono. That's
Oh, you look cool. And I'm wearing these sort of off-white pants
yeah.
with sort of Harvard crimson and chocolate colored Nikes with no socks. So
Awesome.
that is what I present. Greasy hair, you see.
I like it.
43, so grays and so forth. Right. I have an apartment. I'm Airbnb everywhere around town, and not that nice, because you can see here in the background the sort of masking tape solution to the inset of the air conditioning unit or whatever it is. So, but actually not too shabby, right? Rather large for New York
Yeah.
and fully appointed, and it's in a basement, which I quite like because it has a sort of dungeon quality, like right here.
I like that.
You
Yeah.
see, the kitchen is very dungeony. And that's like, that has an interrogation vibe to it, a small table with just two chairs.
Yeah.
And you're basically in a basement with that little so I love it. So it suits me. And there's a full kitchen situation,
Yeah.
minimal but sufficient.
What else? Yeah, you don't need a chef's
Yeah.
kitchen.
And I'm just here for 8 days.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm quite
So-
comfortable.
You live in New York, but you're currently moving around to just kind of Airbnb in different locations. Is that
I like
correct?
to be in different neighborhoods, and because I'm so mentally ill, people around me can generally tell very
Yeah.
quickly that there's something wrong with me, because I talk to myself and I say strange things and I behave in strange ways. And so I've learned that, I can stay in a place possibly for a few months, but it's better for me to move a lot, actually.
Yeah. I mean, funny that you mentioned that. So what does normal even mean? Because I think many of us especially who live alone, talk to ourselves. So when does talking to yourself seem a little bit odd? Like, I don't know.
Well, I'm completely insane. So that's a question for a different person. It's not just that I talk to myself. I say crazy things and behave in crazy ways. So
Okay.
it's just an overabundance of that.
Yeah, like what some
I mean,
people
like
are.
right now I've got a wristband on from a psych ward.
Oh,
as
you
we
do?
speak. And I look like a dapper Brooklyn successful maybe designer or hipster of some variety. And right, it's a thing, it's a look, it's something that can be read on the street, and yet here it is, right?
I like that. Thank you for wearing it. I should put one of mine on.
Right, one of them, right? It's like that. Yeah, I got you. I feel you. Look very elegant. You look very stylish.
Thanks.
You're giving me it girl, and I love the artwork, and I love your super casual. We could be like in your apartment in Paris for all I know. And you're a Miami girl right now. You're in Miami.
Yes, but I'm gonna have a little apartment in Paris at the end of May, so I'll wear this.
Oh, marvelous. Good for you.
But I'm into torture. I study torture. I'm into it,
I'm sexually, I'm a dom. Emotionally, I'm beyond complex. I think about war and political violence. I think about war, political violence, and cyber espionage like all the time. I'm a lunatic, you know. But what I did was I tried to find a way where I said, what could I do now that I, you know, as a middle-aged guy, or I guess it's been 35. I'm 43 now. You know, I had like a failed small business and a failed marriage, and like, but was free, and was trying to figure out what the hell was going on with me. Was clearly had been a workaholic and covering something up, and was like had time and was alone, and realized that I was completely insane, and with free time saw that I did completely insane things. Right. And so the workaholic thing had been covering up my festering mental illness.
Well, what were you working on that took your time? What were you doing?
Well, like the obsessions I had and the fetishes I had for like geography and politics and violence. Right. So I snapped into a spy delusion, and I didn't even realize it. I was just obsessed with certain things, certain topics.
Yeah.
Strategic risk.
Sounds
I
familiar.
was obsessed with these things. And it's but on a sort of sane level, I thought, well, if I'm completely insane, what could I do with my life? And I thought, well, two things. I can think of art or frankly espionage, because they're all out of their minds. Only a spy, right? The spies are insane. They're absolutely insane. I mean, they're monsters. You know, they place themselves between nation states at war. I mean, they're insane. And so I thought, well, I could do espionage, and I could be an artist of some kind. And so I began to write. And so I write about espionage.
That's great.
And those are the two things that I do. And that was my way of trying to solve the problem of my mental illness.
Yeah.
The problem is that it's progressive. And so the illness keeps getting worse, even though I get better at piecing together solutions for handling it. You know, it's a cat and mouse thing. Sometimes it's a seduction.
I think you're handling it very well, though. And sometimes I think you can think yourself into a worse.
The problem is the isolation.
Yeah.
The isolation. My writing is like a joy, and it just pours out of me. So I don't deal with like the writer's block or the depression that much.
Oh, me either. But just being alone.
The isolation.
Yeah. That's the thing.
Fucking horrible. This little knife right here, this little butter knife I'm eating the peanut butter with.
Yeah.
And it has a lot to do with the fact that I studied war. So
I think it's
of stabbing someone, you know.
Can I make an observation though?
Please.
I think that has a lot to do with this like interior kind of world that you live in. And I'm wondering if you ever felt like you kind of lived in a world in your head, and if you did that when you were younger, because I'm kind of thinking that for me, it all sort of makes sense.
Yeah, I've never heard any of this before, but it makes a shit ton of sense to me.
Yeah.
To escape abuse, I got really into high art and culture. I have strange predilections and peculiar obsessions and so on. It's true, I do.
Yeah.
Incredible, because this is bizarre. Especially since I know the topic is mental health. That means I'm giving private health information to a complete stranger.
Right.
You know, a woman in this instance in, you know, a bathrobe negligee kind of thing, and, you know, very, you know, well appointed. And I'm giving her information about myself. And
although we have a friend in common, so at least I'm not.
He's not a friend, he's a scumbag. But you know, that's what he is. But he's younger than you, was that some of the attraction, darling? He's like 35 and you're 42, and did you predate him, that little lunatic?
No, that's another story. That's
shout out to Jordan Baker, the cunt.
Yes, since he shouted you out on the podcast when he was on.
I'm sure he was very flattering. So we know we have the same scumbag in common. And now I'm about to give her private health information And how secure is Zoom? I mean, whatever. And how secure is this girl's? I mean, I don't know her information.
Well, I am a faculty
But,
member
you
at a
know,
university.
what I want to tell you
Okay.
is that I don't give any shits.
Okay.
And so that's why we're going to do this, because I don't care.
Good. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I kind of tend to see it as a good thing. What do you think?
Well, when you tell someone that you're mentally ill, you never get a good response unless they're also mentally ill. And for me, as a severely mentally ill person,
Yeah.
you know, I only get a good response. You know, there's the people who are like, we're all a little crazy. Huh?
That's,
You know,
I say that.
you know, and then there's the people who think you're dangerous or afraid of you.
Yeah.
You know, the people that want to intervene or the people that take advantage of you, which is a fact. And, you know, they
It's a
say
fact.
that you know, the mentally ill are far more likely to be the victims of crimes than
Yeah.
commit them. And it's because when people have this information about you, they can, you know, they have power over you, and they can even conspire if it's a family, for example. You know, and often it worsens your condition, but so you're vulnerable as a mentally ill person.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
It does present a problem. You have the disease or whatever it is, you know, whether it's a disease or not is a complicated issue. What it is, what mental illness is.
Right.
But let's assume it's an illness, a medical pathologized thing. For the time, right? It's dangerous to you, and it makes the people in your life potentially more dangerous to you as well.
Yeah, it does. Because I think there's a lack of trust and a little paranoia in the background of many different things happening in your head, and that really is amplified.
Over the course of weeks or months, having even light conversations with my family, I would feel collectively the sort of tug and pull of what they had been discussing behind my back about what they wanted an outcome to be for me in, say, the next 6 months or year. I would tell them, say, oh, I'd like to move here or go there. And I just knew they were discussing it and coordinating, you know, influencing my behavior, just influencing it. But the fact that they coordinated the influence.
Right.
A family collectively can sort of swarm around you and take your agency away. That they also maybe forget to care for you and leave you in a nursing home, which is commonplace.
Yeah.
Or in my case, it's psychiatric wards. Or in the case of orphans and forgotten or, you know, abused children, it's the foster care system, which is horrifying. Right?
Yeah.
So hemorrhaging these problems. So, but the point is, I see my own problems in mental illness as relative to these other issues. You know, it's not like it's a unique phenomenon.
Right. Can I say your name? Can I introduce you with your name? Just so I have that.
Sure. I'm Jonathan Andrew Price.
Welcome to Manic in Miami. And I'm here in Miami. My name is Holly Hurricane. And I'm here with Jonathan Price, who is joining from New York City. And he's speaking with me about his experiences with severe mental health issues, psychotic disorders, schizophrenia, among other things. So that's what we're going to be discussing. Thank you very much again for joining.
Sure, glad to be here.
So
Hey, listen, we should include the entire recording, not just that. It shouldn't start with that.
no, but I can edit it.
No, leave it. It should definitely be the whole thing, because I thought we were just doing it. So let's just leave the whole thing. It'd be so much fun with us goofing around with our clothes and stuff, because that's, you know, formal, logical pragmatics. That's context. I think people should have context. Like, listen,
no, that's fine.
Oh, like when you and I are negotiating, hey, what looks best? Well, I'm going to move around, and hey, I'm in a nice place, but it's not that nice, and this is my lifestyle. And so all of that context should be available to the viewer. I would suggest the first thing is edit nothing. Edit nothing.
Okay. I won't edit anything. And my cat's watching, by the way. That's okay. With
Perfect. Hello, kitty. Hi. Yeah. And this is something very interesting. It begins in Plato's Republic. You know, he says, well, what can we all agree on? And they come very confidently and very quickly to repay your debts to your friends.
Right.
And Plato says, well, what if your friend has lost their mind? And what if the dead is weapons? You know, and I mean, that's an issue that we're dealing with as one of many issues in American politics. We're laden with guns, but should the mentally ill have them? And how do we determine who's mentally ill? Then is the problem. Right?
Yes.
And it's right there at the beginning of the Republic in Plato that you know, it's an open question as to whether the mentally ill are deserving of normal ethical treatment.
Yeah. I don't know that I've had ethical treatment, and I don't know what normal treatment really is. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, same. Yeah. I mean, what I've experienced in psychiatric wards is demented. It's torture.
Can you explain a couple things? I have a whole episode talking about the psych ward last year. Is there anything you want to share that people maybe should hear about?
I mean, there's one thing I'll say. I mean, it's torture. It's a dungeon. It's torture. It's medicalized torture. Everything about them is wrong. But just to give one image, in every psychiatric ward I've been in America, and that's in 3 states, New York, the great states of New York, Texas, and Florida. And I've been locked up, you know, I don't know, in the 15 to 30 range times.
Okay.
You know, and it's like the losing count range. And a number of different hospitals, from like nice-ish ones to like low rent ghetto hospital, you know, public, you know,
Yeah.
broken system type of place.
Yeah.
And even worse in Florida and elsewhere. So just like bad, you know, bad to good, seen it all, or enough to know what the hell's going on in them. And they're all torture chambers, even the nice ones. It's just like a nursing home. I mean, it's torture chamber. You're taking everything away that's normal from people, and everything away from them that they need to feel okay. You know?
Yeah.
And in psychiatric wards, I would say just one image, right? There are, in everyone I've been in, there are sexual predators, like criminal sex offenders, repeat sex offenders,
Yeah.
multiple, and rape victims, sometimes like catatonic rape victims, like their dad just raped them type of victim. And they're mixed in together with low supervision, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with a psych ward? We could do an entire series on it. You know? So I'll just give that one image, and we could go on to talk about something else, because, you know, I mean, I've recently got out of one, and you're recovering from being tortured is what you're doing.
It's very traumatic. Yeah.
But now it's also wonderful because things are normal again.
Yeah.
And normal feels great. It's like a get out of prison feeling. you
Yeah.
know? But it's like a get out of prison feeling. Instead of being in there for, years, you're in there for 3 or 4 weeks, but because it's torture. And it's like, not that prison isn't, but it's psychiatric torture, dealing with the psychiatrist. I mean, one of the torturous things about it is that this person is making a decision about your freedoms.
Yeah.
Right. They're like a jailer, and you haven't committed a crime.
Yeah.
And they'll pathologize any behaviors you have,
Anything.
regardless of whether they're normal or not. And what's normal inside a psychiatric ward? Nothing. So your behavior, how do you have normal behavior in an abnormal environment, especially one that's full of torture?
Yeah.
But still, that's what they're measuring. And they're effectively a jailer. It's a gray area in the law, not entirely gray. And I use the court systems to get out often. I don't know. We should talk about something else. I mean, but I would also say I learned things about myself in psychiatric wards. I had a friend who was a biker gang member. He was from New Jersey, Mikey. He was a Hell's Angel. And in his life, he had been a monster of violence. I mean, Hell's Angels are meth, prostitution, and weapons trafficking. It's serious shit. And this guy was one of my roommates, in a psychiatric ward. And we just loved each other like brothers. You know, he was just, to me, he was just a wonderful fellow, you know. And so you learn things like that about yourself in psych wards that you don't learn in other places. You know, they're lit, as the young people say, psych ward.
Well, I mean, I also bonded with young people who were sent directly from prison to the psych ward, and you know, they were chatting me up in there, and it was like some, you know, 23-year-old kid who was saying, I really don't want to go back to prison, but was really nice. And it was the most bizarre thing, you know.
And like a rich kid and the homeless. You know, Holly, if you've been in them.
Well, I mean, I was in like the worst one ever, Mercy Hospital in Miami, which is really close to where I live. And I was the only, I mean, I heard for other people who are in there who have been like nonstop, that is the worst one too. And I was one of 3 women. I was the only woman who could speak and communicate with people. And then it was just me and everybody else. So it was an interesting experience. I'll say that. Yeah. But you know what? I wasn't scared of anyone. I think I probably got lucky, but I wasn't.
Well, you should be. I would play a game. I'm a pretty sophisticated, you know, urbane, worldly person. And I think I know, I can tell things. And I would play a game in the psych ward. How many murderers are there? How many?
Oh, I thought about that. Yeah.
How many killers are there? And I've known in a few instances that, you know, and there's a lot of talk of violence in psych wards, but I've known in a few instances that there were murderers, men and women. And at least 2 serial killers I got to know, you know, over the course of 3 weeks with no one else around and nothing to do.
I mean, there were a couple of guys who were kind of like I would, you know, profiling them with stereotypes, like maybe middle-aged, older white guys, catatonic, really kind of intimidating stare. And I kind of wondered, what the hell did those guys do? Maybe serial killer crossed my mind. But I became friends with someone in the psych ward who I spoke to today. He's still a recovering crack addict. He, you know, is on the schizophrenic spectrum, has been for a long time. And he's honestly been such a good friend to me since I got out. So that's someone that you would.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I've never connected with anyone from the psych ward ever. I've wanted to and never have.
So
but I also don't maintain human relationships. I just don't.
Understandable.
I've sort of given up on doing it. Well.
I kind of have to give up on them too. So what, if you're committed involuntarily, why is that? Is that because someone else is identifying your behavior as psychotic, or?
Oh, in my case, darling, it's always the police.
Okay.
Someone calls the police.
Okay. Yep. And the police will immediately take you in no matter what. I found out.
No matter what. No, I mean, like in some instances, for example, my ex-girlfriend, I was really monitoring my behavior, and she, you know, one of the things that she said to the cops was that, oh, he's out on the street in his pajamas. Yeah, I was wearing slippers and a shirt, and I was on the stoop smoking a cigarette. I mean, so when they show up, she's gone, and I'm, you know, and there's been no violence or threats of any kind, just arguments and things, and they show up, and it's like a 23-year-old kid. The paramedics or whatever, and the cops are like 25, 28, you hope they are. They're kids, you know, and they've got guns, they're in your apartment. And, you know, like I'm sitting there writing an essay on Fidel Castro. And this young, you know, paramedic stepped to me and says, do you know where you are? And I was like, bitch, I'm in my kitchen. You're in here with guns in my living room. Do you know where you are? Do you know who I am as a person? Right?
There's a really obvious Miami joke. I won't, but good thing you were in Miami, because if it was Fidel Castro.
Yeah, what?
If it was a Fidel Castro essay, the cop would be like, do you know where you are? Like, you don't write that shit.
Oh, I didn't say whether it was nice or mean, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's so easy to just see a psychiatric history and then just assume that every little movement is the worst, and then there's a
Yeah.
reason to handcuff you,
And then
right?
once the cops know you in
Yeah.
the neighborhood, you're fucked. I mean, you're just fucked.
Yeah. I think I've also been lucky because as a woman, just kind of a feminine, like middle class white woman. I mean, I was Baker acted once and taken in handcuffs. And when I got there, the psychiatrist, who was this young, cool guy, started talking to me, and we listened to the same psychiatry podcast. And we were talking about an episode about lithium being discovered in drinking water in Australia by a psychiatrist. And he was like, "Wait, did you listen to Dr. Pewter's podcast?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "You're
Was it
getting
like you guys were on a date or something?
yes." He was like, "That's great." And he's like, "Oh, this is not going to go on your record. You're leaving, and I'm just going to like destroy any evidence of this. You should go have a glass of wine."
Oh, but he let you out immediately.
Yes.
Wonderful.
It
I've
was
got let out a few times by some good psychiatrists, but I'm so insane. Usually
It was
not.
so cool. It was really nice. And,
Usually it's a judge that lets me go.
he was like, "You're not going to hurt anyone, and you're not going to hurt yourself. I had a good time talking to you. I'm really sorry for all of the
I mean, yes, because that's the legal standard, isn't it? Harm to self or imminent
Yeah.
harm to self or others, right?
Yeah." And you know what he said? He goes, "Oh, the police will Baker act you for anything." He's like,
Or
anything.
Someone calls and they, yep,
Yeah.
you're going. Or
He's like-
I mean, I've experienced with a cop where
Yeah. He's
they
like,
just
"You
know
have
me. They
you
see
have a
me.
he's like, "You have a psychiatric history. You could breathe, and they would definitely Baker act you." Like
Yeah.
anyone could call, for any reason, and you would be taken in. That's just kind of
Taking
how
a
it
ride.
works.
And once you get there, they strip you of your dignity immediately.
Yeah, they do.
They take your cell phone, they strip your clothes off you, and they put you in a room to wait. Where
Oh,
some people are like at the height of their freaking out, and so it's a really unsafe environment. And you don't
Yeah.
know whether you're gonna be there 3 days or 3 weeks.
yeah. And in the
Longer.
ER before I was admitted last year, there was someone just screaming with like people in the waiting room, just around tons of people. "Are you trying to commit suicide? Are you trying to commit suicide?" And that's not why I was
Screaming.
brought. I'm like, I was like, "Excuse me," and I was manic, so I was like, "Excuse me, but can you please speak to me in a private place?" But like, I mean, I should have been angry about that. You don't start yelling that around people. It was just so.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
the nurses will scream at you because
yeah.
some of them you're subhuman, so they're screaming like, oh, it's horrible. Yeah, so much screaming at you. Talking earlier when we were just chatting on the street about anti-psychiatry, right?
Yeah.
And much about the movement, but I very much vibe with what I do know about it. And two, I think a lot of people sublimate, sort of psychotic or schizophrenic behaviors in religious worship.
Oh,
And-
absolutely.
And that's sort of a nice, steam valve let off kind of thing for people who would
Yeah.
otherwise, like, so for example, I might think, oh, the lights are changing at the intersection because I'm a world-renowned international spy. I'm not world-renowned, that's who I am because I'm so great. Being an international spy, and here I am in, let's say, Mobile, Alabama, and I'm speeding through town because I've just done an information hit on Stennis, the space center in fucking Louisiana, and so I'm on the run. All right. And the lights change green. And I might think as a schizophrenic, oh, thank God the CIA shows up occasionally and changed the light green for me. Now, my mother, who's a Catholic lunatic, would probably think that God had changed the light green for her. But now she's also a lunatic, but her flavor takes a different and sort of maybe even socially acceptable right, expression, oh, God changed that light for me because, God. It's not for me and God is everywhere and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And, I mean, also you're joking around about it. So it's only in those moments. And then later it's kind of funny to think, this is what I was talking about with Jordan, actually. It's funny to think that in certain situations, you truly believe everything around you is about you. Like people are doing this and because they're targeting you, and it doesn't make any sense. That's not how anyone lives. Like,
You know, I describe my mental illness as a breakdown of well, a lot of ways, but one way is a breakdown of the boundary between myself and everything else. And so
Yeah.
it includes sometimes when I feel like the environment is controlling me or something externally is controlling me and I've lost control.
yeah.
I'm being manipulated or controlled in some way. And also that I am somehow with my own mind at other times controlling the environment outside of me. Right. But
Yeah.
so since I've experienced both, I think it's some type of breakdown between the boundary of self and external world and self and other and so on.
And it can be the inverse. That's so strange. Yeah. Yep. People are aligning to make these things happen to get at me. And then on the other side, it's like, no, this is the synchronicity that I'm creating.
Yes, I'm the maestro. I'm the conductor. Everything is going my way. So
I understand it. And I'll tell you,
that's right. Yeah.
But it's interesting, like in psychoanalysis, the way that personality theories are put forward. There's one in particular.
I don't know much about this. Tell me.
Well, I don't know much about this either, which is why I wish I knew more. But there is a contemporary psychoanalyst and clinical psychologist, Nancy McWilliams. She's really incredible and smart, but she rejects a lot of the DSM. She rejects a lot of the DSM criteria, organization of things.
She
like
what is already?
Yeah, she's like, everything should be there to help the patient and not just to it's weird in that sense. The DSM could be seen as something set up to really to incarcerate people, to keep people down rather than to really help them. And so anyway, but the
hospitals, the drug companies, the insurance companies, the government, everyone is involved in that book and the people aren't, and it's not very public, right? And they've given us a bunch of doozies already, like gay is a disease.
Yeah. And I mean, she's like, and she, in the very delicate, polite terminology, respectful terminology. She's like, okay, so you can point out this and this and this and this criteria. How does that help anyone get better? How does that help anyone with any of their problems? They're not coming to therapy because they meet 9 of the 9 criteria for borderline personality disorder. They're coming to therapy for regular things in their life that aren't working out, that they want to fix. It's pretty basic. And so it's not structured the right way. But anyway.
Still human, right? They're still fucking human.
Yeah, exactly. It's so bizarre. So it's so antiquated in so many ways. But she has a personality spectrum that goes from like secure, healthy to neurotic to borderline. Her version of psychoanalysis kind of definition of borderline to psychotic, and they're all related to identity. And so psychotic is on the extreme end of the spectrum with a disturbance in identity. And I find reading about that really interesting because I didn't think of it that way so much before. But when you're having these psychotic disturbances, I've had these problems where I think someone else is inside of my body. So it's true. Literally, I'm not me. There's something else in here.
Right. Yeah.
The ultimate problem with identity. So when you said you write about identity and
think about it, like step back for 1 second, think about it from like a philosophy of language perspective. Think about the sentence, I am not myself.
I know.
Right. Hold on. Like there's no understanding of what that means. And yet it is something people say.
Yeah.
I am not myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you then also think that someone else's spirit has projected themselves inside of your body and is kind of elbowing you out of the way inside of your own body, and what does that mean? And what is the mind connection to? I don't know. It's just that now I really, really do think of it in terms of identity. And I want to explore and read more about that and kind of come up with some of my own
Well, you
theory
know,
about
how
that.
about this, right? Like, I like to think about all the forces on the individual. The forces on, so, you know, all right, we evolved in like groups of 30 to 100 other monkeys for most of it, probably, right? But now we have global media. You know, the work product that rises to the top in art and politics and culture and labor and technology of, you know, 9 billion people on this planet. So that's a dramatic difference. And if you think about the individual is created out of, it's a sort of epiphenomena of all the things, the pressures on the individual, the structures, right? So politics, culture, war, violence, food insecurity, whatever you put into the individual, culture comes out, identity comes out, gender performance comes out, shit gets pressed into us and it just sort of comes out. Now, I think if we saw it that way, we would probably feel differently about the need to explain what's happening when we're having a feeling. Well, what's happening? Well, a lot of things are happening. You know, I mean, like, what is this? Like, it's like I'm in a dungeon, right? But also it's spacious and nice and inexpensive for New York. And it's a neighborhood I quite like.
Yeah.
So, and also because of the internet, we were able to have this really cool conversation with this beautiful, sophisticated woman in Miami. And she looks amazing and she's so smart and this is fun, right? So like, yes, I'm a little bit in a dungeon because there's no windows and blah, 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 but I'm looking dapper and we're having a nice time.
Great. Yeah.
And so it's a complex, right? It's a complex situation.
Yeah. So how could you explain the feelings or thoughts that you have when you are slipping into a psychotic state?
Well, in my case, everything becomes war, political violence, espionage,
Okay.
right? Those 3 things, war, political violence, and espionage. I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
And so when I'm crazy, that's all I'm thinking about. Even the people in my life, my family members or a lover or a friend or an acquaintance, and I have very few of them and very little contact with them.
And you feel that they might be at risk. And so you're trying
Well,
to.
they become, even our conversations become lemmas in other things that I'm thinking about. I sort of use our conversation to process other information. Which again would be war, political violence, and espionage. I just have a total obsession. So yeah. And for years.
So how have you gotten out of that?
I'm usually mostly insane. And it cycles because or it's sort of it gets worse because the topics themselves that I'm obsessed with, you know, like I'll look at a picture of Lenin for an hour, you know, where he looks like he's got eyes like Charlie Manson, and I'll look into his eyes. And, you know, I do weird things like that, and I'll read about mass political murder for a day or a month or whatever. So all that stuff goes into me, right? And so I turn out to be an extremely violent person as well. Now, I've never raised my hand against another person. I raise my voice is all I ever do. But I could make you cry in 30 seconds.
Okay.
You know, or afraid. I could make you afraid in 30 seconds.
I believe that.
You know, I mean, I've got, and it largely comes from all of the violence that's inside of me because of what I study.
But I mean, are you ever worried that you could become violent against somebody?
So the way I think of it is that, like,
I didn't get
my writing, like, you know, I don't want to punch someone in the face. I want to chew on the charred remains of their countrymen after I've nuked their nation. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not, you know, like I'm not into fisticuffs, you know, and I'm a geek, so I probably would lose a fight, you know.
But I'm saying no one should be afraid that you're going to suddenly hurt
No,
them.
but I might try and destroy a country on earth with my writing and succeed in it because that happens all the time in history.
Okay,
Right.
So
So
what
I'm
do you-
that kind of, I'm that sort of violent. Does that make sense?
it does. So
I
when
think
like
it does. It's, you know, it's in the
does.
ballpark. It feels about right.
if you would say that you had like homicidal thoughts, they would be thoughts that you'd be expressing in your writing about things
That's
that you
right.
were
Yeah.
on a grand scale, right?
But
Yeah.
but also activists sort of trying to achieve the violence.
What do you mean?
I mean, like if I would write things that would achieve violence.
Oh, I see.
And I do write things that could potentially someday achieve violence.
Like
So
a
that's
manifesto,
tricky thing.
like a call to arms.
Absolutely, sure. That's right. That in the hands of the wrong person,
Right.
easily be weaponized. You know,
So then why do you
or
still
the
do
right
it?
person too. I don't even know.
Why are you still doing it if you think that a wrong person could?
Oh, because I love to write, and I think that somehow it'll have a happy ending.
What are you writing now?
I'm writing memos about strategic risk.
Okay. I have a new copy of Notes from Underground near me. And since you're in the
Is that
basement apartment,
Dostoevsky?
yeah, the underground man who's psychotic, it made me think of you.
I haven't read it.
It's so good.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, turn the oven off. See, look, lunatics are just regular folks.
Yeah.
You'd be looking sexy.
Me?
Yeah, you'd be looking good. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm in a dungeon. It's a nice one, but it's still a base. It's a hole in the ground. So just yeah, it's nice. Thank you for looking nice. All right, I don't need my motherfucking phone. I just need to find my cigarettes. They're right where they should be. Okay, off we go. Yeah, so you know what? It turns me on. Look how heavy the door is. Oh, so heavy. Yeah, it's
Oh,
cool.
yeah. Nice.
Yep. And then outside,
Okay.
and set the thing down.
My new
Oh, sick.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe I could turn this up. Oh, yeah, I can get you louder.
First words of the book are I am a sick man, I am a wicked man.
Fucking A, right.
Famous person.
That is amazing. I did
Yeah.
not.
He lives underground and he's writing.
So I'm up on the first floor,
Yeah.
and it's rather nice. I mean, it's got this, you know, this like Corinthian columns here and stuff.
Nice.
and
Yeah.
It's not so bad.
Where were you before?
In Williamsburg,
Oh, right.
and then in Orlando and Asheville and Austin and Chicago, and just hopping around.
Now people are like in the Bushwick, Ridgewood area.
Ridgewood, that's right. Everyone's moving to Ridgewood, all the cool young people. And the sour hipsters are still in Greenpoint. They sort of made it, and they're sour, and they move there, and they say, you know, everyone's moving here and ruining it for the Polish people. Yeah, you too.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
if you have more money, you're planning on moving to Park Slope when you have a baby and marry a rich man, you aging hipster piece of shit. Yeah, I'm New York. I'm a jerk. I'm fucking New York dickbag. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thanks. Good.
So, yeah. So how old were you when you were diagnosed with any kind of mental issue?
Well, my first issue was mommy was abusing me, and so was daddy, and I had some depression that was showing, and so they sent me to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist gave me Prozac, which covered up my feelings and numbed my feelings to cover up the symptoms of abuse. And I was probably 12, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there. I would guess 13 or probably 14, probably 14.
Yeah.
So that was my first psychiatrist. And now, I mean, I've seen more than 100. And what was interesting is it actually made me more suicidal. And I think it made me the psychotic adult that I am, because my experience as a teenager on Prozac, it was like before the Prozac, my emotions existed and mattered. Now it's like if I step in dog shit, I don't really care. I suppose that means that one little pill can effectively eliminate even normal emotions, which means that normal emotions are total bullshit.
I know. I think
And we
about the
don't-
same thing.
We don't think of the fact that a 14-year-old would have those thoughts, come to those
Yeah.
conclusions, those dangerous, very dangerous conclusions. But yeah, that's how I remember it, just sitting there at schools, kind of okay, and thinking that.
Well, I think we're at a very heightened state in a way in adolescence because our brains and everything is opening up to so many new things and still changing and growing. So my personal theory is that's a critical time for things to really damage you. I think 14, that's a
Yeah.
bad age, don't you think?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You're rapidly becoming an adult, and yeah,
When
rapid.
things are,
It's-
and when
it's-
things are
it's-
hurting you and you don't really understand why. I mean, that's
As
going
a
to have,
middle-aged guy, I think about projects that I want to do, things I want, and I think in like 5 years, 10 years, the things that happen to you in adolescence in like 2 to 4 years, it's a lot
Yeah.
of shit that the kids go through.
yes.
Oh,
Had you ever experienced bullying?
yes and no, which is very interesting. So when I was younger, I went to a regular school, but because I was a real bookish kid and bullied at home, so I did get bullied. However, then I went to an art school where, I was like a super cool kid at the art school. I ended up being a geek that got bullied, but also became a very sort of cocky, seducer as a, not someone with a damaged sexual ego or something. Do you know what I mean? And also
Yeah.
the psychopath part takes that away. I mean, I have to interpersonally dominate every person I meet all the time, always, forever, for
I don't
safety's
think, I
sake.
think you're
For
really
safety-
hard on yourself. I
No,
really
it's
don't
like a
think you're a
safety
psychopath.
issue for me. Well, thank you for that. I can't stand to see like people suffer. I can't stand to see it.
Then
But
you're
I can inflict it on people suffering. Does that make sense? And I can do that without feeling.
It sounds like an identity disturbance in different states, which would support the psychoanalytic theory on the psychotic spectrum personality.
Yeah, my problems are problems of identity. And that's why I also chose to do spy work.
Yeah,
Because
Right.
I could be a different person. It's the only job where you could be a different person every 5 minutes.
yeah. The psychotic state is also an identity disturbance. I don't think that's something that would occur to people most of the time. It's not really how it's framed, you know? But you're really not sure what is reality, what's happening around you, and who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. And that's
Who
what
you are, that's right. Yeah, I completely agree. Yes.
Yeah. Like if I ask you, who are you? What's your response? You know?
Jonathan Andrew Price, pro counsel, United States government.
Okay.
I'm a Lockheed man. I'm a writer. I'm a radical writer, and I'm severely mentally ill.
Yeah. And
Well, hold on, but I could keep going, right? I could
Yeah.
say, I'm a dirty Dem. I'm a champagne liberal. I was a mole in the collegiate Republicans for a progressive group. I mean, we are a lot of things.
right. Yeah. And the mental illness though also can erode the sense of self-worth, I think. You're constantly even if you're
I have a crisis of self-worth. I do. That is a problem.
so do I. Yeah. And
Because largely, I think it comes from the isolation. I have short encounters with people. That's why I can't work, because I can't have coworkers. I can't have someone that I'm next to for 3 months, much less 10 years in a job. I can't be around people. I mean, so I have to be able to walk away at any moment to control the environment.
yeah. I mean, academics would have been a good career path for you.
No, because I'm free speech,
I don't know. I mean, you can spend a
Your
lot of your time alone.
listeners know about your relationship with Jordan, like, I mean, come on.
Hey.
Like, I'm a free speech radical. I mean, I'm giving up the goods. I don't expect you to. It's fine. You're the host. You're the
No,
host.
I'm open about all of it. I don't care.
You are the hostess, ma'am.
I don't have
And
any
you're
really,
an-
I don't have anything to hide.
And you're the hostess, and you're an excellent hostess.
Thanks.
I've had such a wonderful time.
What about your first diagnosis with something related to the psychotic spectrum?
Well, then there was a suicide attempt, and I got 3 days for that, but that was one of those things where it was a cool psychiatrist, and I was like, I just want to be on the beach with my friends. I can't believe I'm alive. And he's like, cool, get out of here.
Was
And I
that
was
in Florida?
That was in Florida, and I was totally fine.
Okay.
And that first time, I didn't really notice. Sometimes when you're a kid and no one's fucking with you, you don't really notice how bad the psych wards are. For
Yeah.
the adults, you know what I'm saying? Because you just pass through for 2 days, and I didn't really, yeah. And
And
this was
for,
a pretty good one where you could go outside and smoke cigarettes and blah blah blah. So
yeah, going outside, that was my huge hang up in the psych ward last year. I was like, we have to be able to go outside. This is
a lot
just,
of them you can't,
Yeah.
for bullshit reason, yeah.
yeah. Wow. So you had that experience in Florida, South Florida?
There
Not
was
my,
college, there was a suicide attempt, and it was just, I always assumed my life it was suicide. I wasn't even that bad of a mood or a depression. There was just a knife that belonged to my grandfather. I grabbed it and went at my wrist and just tore my wrist up and started bleeding. And yeah, it was just like instinct to go at myself. And
what led you to doing that? Obviously it was
that's what's so funny is that I wasn't depressed at the
you
time.
weren't depressed. Okay.
I wasn't depressed at the time. But there was so much depression in my life, and I thought it was inevitable. It was just like, well, why not now? Honestly, just the presence of the knife was enough. Well, that's what they say about guns, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, just the presence of
Right.
the gun. I tell my friends, like, I don't want them to decide that the mentally ill can't have weapons. But for me personally, if I had a gun, and I'm trained with firearms too, but if I had a gun, I would shoot myself for breakfast.
Yeah.
I would put myself down like the rabid dog I know I am. You know what I'm saying? I would just fucking pop with my Pop-Tarts, you know?
And the same thing goes for, rage against another person and then they're dead, like because there's a loaded gun there. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But I also like that weird thing about America that we're just armed to the teeth. I like how fucking unusual it is. I mean, we're like France if they had the weapons that the fucking Afghans have, the Mujahideen. We're like France plus the Mujahideen, right? It's crazy, America. It's a wild place. I bought these pickles and they're just not great. They're just don't eat one.
That's disappointing.
Well, so then I had like an early to midlife crisis at 35. And so my solution was workaholic. I realize now I just worked all the time.
And
You know,
what were you doing? What was your job?
I worked in restaurants and I would do 2 or 3 jobs and I would just work every day and that type of thing. I worked in high-end restaurants. I was a sommelier. I was a wine guy.
Oh, really? That's nice.
Yep. And I worked in fancy restaurants in the South and where I learned my manners to the extent that I have them. I can fake them at least. And then in the West Village in like a Hollywood on the Hudson hot spot full of celebrities where I learned sort of the behaviors of the rich and powerful media moguls and that type of shit.
Where was that?
That was a place called The Lion, and it was like
yeah,
that.
I remember that place. Yeah.
Yeah, Valentino was one of my regulars,
Yeah.
it was that kind of cool thing. But then I had a small business which failed and I had free time then afterwards. And I was depressed, had free time, and it was the first time I'd had any free time in a long time. And that's when things got really wild and I started doing crazy shit. I was alone. Because then my small business, I owned a 24-hour like fast food place.
Oh, you did? Where
in
was
the
it?
Village.
Okay.
On Avenue A. It was called Empire Biscuit. It was like a fried chicken and biscuit place.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
It was like a late night, early morning place, but we were open 24 hours.
Oh,
I mean,
cool.
there was the worst of it because I was just working myself to death. I think the longest day I ever worked was 37 hours.
Wow.
So I was working myself to death and then I had nothing but free time, nothing but debt. And when you own a business, like a 24-hour business in New York, in Manhattan, like, a lot of people, I had lots of acquaintances. I mean, there's a bicycle repair shop around the corner and the guys who do my delivery, they get their bikes repaired there. So I sort of know the guy who owns it. I mean, that kind of shit. You just like know a lot of people.
And then there I was alone and depressed. And I just started doing whatever I wanted to do. And it turned out that underneath the workaholic was a man who was completely insane. Because the things I did were just, they were too much. And it started right away. And so then you're getting locked up by the police is what's happening. You're on the street. I would leave my apartment, intentionally leave the keys inside, walk around the street, trading books in, because I used to be a rare book dealer, trading books in.
Really?
Trading books in for enough money to buy coffee, not eating, just drinking coffee all around town, staying up for 3 days, sitting in parks with old men, going to war memorials and doing this type of shit, and that's what I'd be doing with my time. And then I'd come back and try and break into my own apartment because I'd intentionally left the keys in and come back exhausted 3 days later, not sleeping. So you're doing things like this and you get, you get pulled in by the cops.
Yeah.
And so then you're in a psychiatric ward, involuntarily committed. And, I started getting diagnosed with schizophrenia then and paranoid schizophrenia and all kinds of shit. And we agreed to do another 20 minutes. And so maybe after we chat a little bit, but but I'm getting a little worn out from it because it's,
of course,
it's heavy,
it's heavy. Yeah. You don't want to do this. Yeah. And it could also, be re-traumatizing in some ways.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're thinking about awful experiences. Yeah.
Right.
Well, one thing I try to measure things so that I don't, so I don't lose sight, just so I sort of anchor or buoy myself. And my writing, I mean, I've written probably 3,000 or 4,000 pages.
Oh, wow.
And so the sheer volume of it gives me some satisfaction or a sense that, like I put in the time, I put in the effort.
Yeah.
And so that, that's a sense in which I feel okay, a sense of accomplishment. The sheer size of it to me is something.
Yeah.
Now it also presents a bit of a problem, but I'm getting really good at writing short work now, so it's not an issue. But I've got long material, short material, medium length stuff. I write essays, I write poetry that sort of leans Bukowski, but is, in terms of form, but it's all about politics. I never really read much Bukowski, but it just looks like it visually. No punctuation or very minimal punctuation, and just phrases on each line. So it's almost like if you broke an essay up into the phrases and took out the punctuation, it would look like free form poetry. So it's a little bit like that, I guess, is what I'm doing. After we're done with this, I'll send you a piece I wrote recently.
I would really like to read it. I also have some that's actually available. Okay. Yeah, I would love to read it. And I can send you a couple of things that I wrote too. And they're all a little bit psychotic. So.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, that sounds great. No, I don't take any meds and I take plenty of drugs.
Oh, really? How?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't smoked pot in ages. It's been like, how long have we been doing this? 2 hours? Tell the psychiatrist, I tell them, I say, listen, numbnuts, I will take your drugs, and I'm mean to them, which makes it difficult. I say, I will take your drugs in 100 years when you guys know what the fuck you're doing. I mean, that's darling, it's a hopeless field. These motherfuckers.
Yeah, but I think if there is an antipsychotic that doesn't have any negative side effects, then maybe that would help some people.
I mean, that would, yes, I would take it sometimes. Sure. Yeah. I would consider. The thing is, it's gotten to the level of dysfunction. Therefore, it's an illness. So if you take
disorder,
if you take the dysfunction out of it, and how many ways are there to take dysfunction out of people's lives? Well, many. Like put a boob in my mouth. Christ. Sorry, I want to keep it professional and everything, or whatever this is. It's a podcast. It's probably just a dozen.
Not professional.
It's probably just a dozen of your friends on Instagram that will watch this. But anyway,
no, like honestly, I have listeners and viewers all over the world, thousands of listens.
Fuck.
Crazy.
Oh, fuck now. People want to know about the money thing. So the way I survive financially is that I get a disability, which is hard to get.
Hmm.
But I get a disability check, which is about $1,900 a month.
Yeah.
And because it's based on my former income.
Okay.
And I made some money when I was younger. So I get about $1,900 a month. I supplement that, in times of crisis, which occur frequently, I have to move often or something, or, I get some money from my family, but they're middle-class retirees, so it's not a lot, but it keeps me from
Well,
being in
that's
a homeless
nice.
situation. It's like bridge money.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll work. The government lets you work up to 9 months in the course of your first year. I'm only a year or two into the disability.
Okay.
So, like I kind of piece it together. I'm a classy guy, so I managed to have fun. I know how to stretch money, to make my life, I have luxury moments and so on. I enjoy myself.
Yeah.
But the fact that I don't have like a home or a vehicle or any responsibilities or children or a spouse or relationships or like, I could have $40 on me. I don't mind that at all. I could have $4,000 on me or $40 on me. I don't have any savings for a middle-aged man. I don't expect to retire because, the numbers are like, what is it going to take 10 to 20 years off of my life? I mean, I don't think about the future. I think about like I'm going to live here in Queens for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
I think I could really enjoy it for 6 months. And then I'm going to move either like maybe to Asheville, North Carolina and hike, or go to Santa Fe and spend some time in the desert driving around, or maybe like I'll move up to the Bronx because I've lived in 3 boroughs, but I've never lived in the Bronx. And so that's the way I make decisions. I mean, that's not the way that a normal adult decides what they're doing,
Do you want a serious long-term partner or relationship? Are you longing
so
for a
I have
romantic?
dated, and I have been mostly I've not dated. Mostly I've been in relationships.
Yeah.
And now my mental illness is so full blown. I feel like I would need to tell someone on a first date, first thing, I'm schizophrenic, I mean, like, I can't. I mean, I would love to, and I like to be close to someone, and I'm romantic and these things, but I'm also a lunatic. I'm an abuser. I'm an emotional abuser, I think.
Are
Uh,
you familiar with Schizophrenic New York City?
It's just because being next to someone like me is difficult. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think it is.
Well, but we're not together for 2 years.
I know.
I know, darling, right?
I think that you're giving yourself a hard time. I'm reading between the lines.
Well, I've been successful in love. I mean, I've had long-term relationships, but I've had many of them that are like 2 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And I just got out of one the last 3 or 4 months, and it's always me that leaves, but I can see that they're exhausted by me also, so it's time to leave because poor things have just had enough. The circus came to town and they got swept up and they had so much fun. And then they're just sort of like, they want it to stop. And, and the circus does not stop. It just keeps going.
That's making me sad.
What did you say?
That's making me sad, but yeah.
It is rather sad. It makes me sad when I talk about it and think about it because it means I'll never have children. I'll never have any of those things. And, this is really sad, right? I live this kind of cool life in some respects,
Yeah.
because I have radical freedom.
Yeah.
I've lived a life that middle-aged men who with, wife and children probably dream of, which is I've lived that log cabin life alone in the woods,
Yeah.
hiking and writing all day and eating a steak and drinking a bottle of wine alone for dinner like a goddamn king, a fucking ribeye that I grilled and but then after that, it's crickets out there, gentlemen. And ladies who want to do the same thing, that isolation thing, it's crickets.
I do that sometimes. So yeah, I can tell you the same. Yeah.
You're fucking alone. And then to be middle-aged now and to come to the conclusion, like I'm not, I don't have kids yet. I'm 43. Socrates had him in his 70s, I think, but the old goat. I just coming to the realization is tough that I'll probably never have children. Like I seen this like Tempur-Pedic mattress commercial or like a fucking, sofa commercial. And it was a man with a baby sleeping on his chest. And it horrified me, you know.
Well, remember that you're speaking to someone who was pregnant with your friend's children 1 year ago today.
Children, twins, it was
Yeah.
twins. Oh my God. Well,
So I think about that a lot because, yeah, I mean, I'm 42.
42.
Yeah. And that was just like complete freak accident. So, yeah. I think-
Three of my exes have had abortions, and it's been at my insistence because I'm mentally ill.
I mean, it was not the right circumstances, and I'm happy that I did it. But I have the same kinds of thoughts that you are having, and so that was weighing on it a lot. And I also got pregnant when I was in recovery from severe psychotic break, and I
Yeah.
was isolating myself again. So I can say that it really re-traumatized me, and it's taken me like until very recently to feel like at all okay. Yeah. It's
I'm
been
really
really hard.
sorry about that. I'm really sorry to hear that.
I mean, this is life though, you know.
Yeah, I say I responded the same thing.
Yeah. It's life, and there are good things. I don't want to end on a sour note, but
No, this has been great. This has
yeah.
been really nice.
the whole idea is just to have more like kind of raw experiences and interviews and discussions with people
Like,
who are going through
now,
it.
mental illness is a burden.
It is.
And you know, if talking frankly about it, and I rarely do,
Mhm.
I try to, but if talking frankly about it would help unburden someone from their situation, then that's fucking sweet. That's great.
Yep.
And hopefully people feel a little unburdened.
I think so. That's what's happening.
Either because they look at me and they think, well, my life's not that bad. Or they look at me and they think, well, my life's just as bad as that, but this guy is managing, or you know, whatever sort of thing, you know.
Or they just say, oh, look at this, you know, this smart, cool guy in New York who has gone through these same terrible experiences at psych wards and, you know.
Sure, like a mentally ill kid who just tried to attempt suicide in college, you know, would be
Yeah.
something who yeah, sure, that'd be cool. Someone I'd vibe with. Yeah, this is great. It's quite an experience to be sitting here with you. Thank you.